Adam's share, 8 games, and a good one tonight, Adam, where once again the Houston Astros have a much higher expected total than any team on the slate, and for like the third straight night, it's not even close.
Yeah, and once again in a spot where I really don't have an answer for how they feel. I mean, it's baseball, so it's obviously possible, but just another spot where you look at it and it's just like, yep, Houston's going to be popular and they should be popular, and it's just a really good spot.
Yeah, I think the most difficult part is trying to justify going underweight on a team or fading a team that seems so unlikely to fail. So
Exactly. I mean, obviously, like you can do it. I mean, like last night, I ended up underweight on Houston. You didn't have to have Houston to win a tournament.
Right.
It helped. It made it harder to win because they did well. But it's baseball. Like anytime every hitter on a team approaches 20% ownership, you can be underweight. It's just not a very likely spot for them to fail.
Right. All right. Well, let's get into it. 8 games on the docket. Deeper dive coming up after us. By the way, taking you up to lock on the Live Before Lock show will be Josh and Chris. And hey, tonight you've got PGA Live Before Lock with Ben and Jason. This is one that you'll want to be around for. A big week in PGA DFS, so they're going to help you out. Ben Rasa, our guy, always getting it done, and one of my favorite guys to listen to when it comes to daily fantasy sports. All right, Adam, let's go. Philly, Milwaukee, Jake Arrieta, Gio Gonzalez. He was on the street a few weeks ago. Now he is in Milwaukee. Well, he's in Philly today, but he's on the Brewers. And he's actually looked fine in 3 starts since being signed. You know, on the other side, you have Jake Arrieta, who continues to do a decent job of preventing runs. Not great, not horrible. But he just, you know, you're not getting the strikeouts you need, especially on a night, for me at least, and maybe you're on a different spot than I am, where the mid-range and the low and high 8K has so many good players or pitchers.
Yeah, I'm not really getting to the mid-range. I'd said this morning on the show with Josh that I thought Gio was a decent option insofar as he is as good as anyone else in that price range. And if I was getting there roster construction wise, I assumed I would get some. But now that I've crunched some lineups, he's just not getting in there. You know, all my pitching exposure is basically going to the top or to the bottom and not the mid range, not getting to either of these guys in difficult matchups. So not on the pitching in this game.
All right. What about hitting? Obviously, Philly's got a ton of right-handed hitters that are capable of doing damage. You've got McCutchen leading off at a pretty discounted price. Gene Segura, Harper, Hoskins, Realmuto, Caesar, Sean Rodriguez batting 7th, Phil Gosselin batting 8th. So definitely a bit of a thinned out lineup for the Phillies today. No Maikel Franco, no Odubel Herrera. And on the opposite side of this one, pretty par for the course lineup. Kane, Yelich, Braun, Moustakas, Aguilar, Ura, Pena, Arcia, and Gonzalez.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hitting in this game is mildly interesting, especially if you are taking the approach where you're going underweight on the Astros. These are 2 offenses that they're not nearly as good a spot as the Astros are, but nobody is. But they do have a lot of talent in their lineup. Milwaukee, in my initial crunch, was coming in as like a top 5, like my 5th highest owned stack. Again, like I adjust stuff based on our projected ownership at 630, so that's not necessarily where I end up. But just in terms of my projections, they're coming in as the 5th highest owned stack. You know, getting the guys like Moustakas and Christian Yelich obviously is really good. Arrieta doesn't miss a ton of bats, especially to lefties, and this part does play up power. So really high upside spots, just not the highest opportunities for success. Keston Ura moving up to 6th in the lineup, a little bit of a lineup boost is nice. I expect he'll keep getting very little ownership, even though he's really cheap and he's better or more talented, at least, than most people in that price range, simply because he's a recent call up. A lot of people aren't going to know who he is just because they don't follow, top prospects in baseball, and he's not hitting at the top of the order. So I expect that's a spot that you can keep getting to in tournaments that will give you some upside, especially here against, a kind of mediocre pitcher in Arrieta.
Another thing too is when you look at Arrieta, it's only, 8 starts or so this year, 50 innings of work. He's striking lefties out at 12%. He has a 1% K minus BB rate, allowing a 208 ISO, 2.1 home runs per nine, and a 136 whip across the board. Really struggling with a 226 BABIP. So it's not like he's getting unlucky. He's been very good against righties, though, right? 26% strikeouts for Arrieta. Very little walks, not a lot of power. So the amount of lefties in this lineup could do damage against Jake Arrieta. Now, there are definitely less than usual. We only have 2 lefties in the entire lineup, Adam. Obviously, no Yasmani Grandal, no Travis Shaw, no Eric Thames. So it is, I'd say, a little bit less appealing for me, just given Jake Arrieta's splits this season.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had crunched, I think, before, no, I guess after the Milwaukee lineup came out. But Grandal would have been my favorite catcher play on the slate. He's not in there, which is really unfortunate. Having a righty-heavy lineup here against Arrieta does make it a less appealing spot for Milwaukee. If they had more lefties in there, I imagine I'd have them as like, my third stack or something like that.
Yeah, I think so too. You would have had Grandal over Chirinos?
Probably. He was my highest owned catcher last night. He was cheaper than Chirinos too. So
Right.
probably like they would have been the 2 that I got a lot of, but
Sure.
I mean he was $500 less than Chirinos.
All right. Let's talk about the Philly side of the ball. We discussed Milwaukee. Is there any interest here in guys like Hoskins for you, or McCutchen, Segura? I think McCutchen's going to have some ownership, but I do think leading off against the lefty at a good park at a price that's come down on a lot of spots is pretty appealing to me. I don't know how much I love the team as a whole, though.
Yeah, McCutchen's the guy I'm getting to the most from Philly because of everything you said. He's a good hitter. He has really good numbers against left-handed pitching in particular. He's leading off. He's affordable. So there's a lot working in his favor there. So I'm getting a lot more of him than I am really anyone else on this team. I think that guys like Hoskins and Real Muto obviously give you a lot of upside, but you also have players that are less expensive and are in really good spots, at least one of the 2 across the slate. You have Chirinos, like you said, similarly priced to Real Muto. You have plenty of first base options with Freeman, with Carpenter, with Goldschmidt that are a lot less expensive than Hoskins. So more tournament plays than anything else for me, with the exception of McCutchen, who I think is one of the better point per dollar options.
Do you ever crack your neck, Adam?
Yeah, it feels great.
It does. So laying in bed the other day and cracked my neck, and Justine's like, a guy locally just cracked his neck and fell into a coma, right? I was like, oh, thanks for telling me. And he's like, so a couple days later, he's like, oh, hey, by the way, and this is this girl just cracked her neck like she normally does, and now she's paralyzed from the neck down. Like, oh, okay, this is good news.
Yeah,
I crack my neck all the time, right? But now
I don't do it that much.
What's that?
I don't do it that much. I crack my back a lot more.
I crack my neck at least once a day. I guess that's not as much as some people, and now every time I do it, like I'm worried about just getting caught, and falling off of my chair. So
Right.
Yeah, it's been scary. Meanwhile, didn't sidetrack us at all. We're talking about the Washington Nationals and New York Mets. Patrick Corbin, Wilmer Font. What's your take on Corbin? I want to talk a little bit of site specificity here, because Corbin's 9,400 on FanDuel. That's 2,600 less than Verlander. So he's $1,000 less than Verlander on DraftKings at 10K. And then over on our sponsor Yahoo, he is $6 less, but also $54. Do you draw any disparity there with the massive price difference from him and Verlander on FanDuel?
Yeah, I mean, I have Verlander projected obviously higher than Corbin by actually a pretty decent amount. This morning I had them a lot closer, but as the day's gone on, the gap's grown. But on FanDuel, where you do get the bigger gap there, and on Yahoo as well, $6 gap is pretty big when your salary cap is $200. I think that Corbin is a really good play. He's still a really high upside play. It's a perfectly fine matchup against the Mets. So the way basically that I'm approaching it on all sites, and the difference in pricing will obviously impact how much I would get on each site, but is Verlander's my priority. But especially in tournaments, there's not a huge difference for me in terms of their potential upside. Like I think that on DraftKings pricing, I think I had Verlander with like a 38% chance of hitting his target score and Corbin around 30%. So it doesn't take a lot for me to be willing to drop down the Corbin to get an extra bat in, especially when you're talking about, like Houston, who's really expensive.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And look, really, what it comes down to is does Corbin have the upside? The obvious answer is yes, right? I mean,
Yep.
he has ridiculous K upside, and that's what we're looking for. Uh, the Mets have loaded their lineup with righties, but the one thing I really like is look at the bottom of it, right? From the pitcher in Wilmer Font to Juan Lagares to I think Wilson Ramos is a fine enough hitting catcher against lefties, but Ahmed Rosario, like the 6, 8, and 9 really aren't going to scare you that much. Ramos will strike out a bit. The top of the lineup, is what you're really would be concerned about. And I just like seeing that, 3 of their best hitters in McNeil, Cano, and Conforto are all lefties, and Patrick Corbin striking lefties out at 37%. So I do think while the Mets have good power, they have this season against righty or lefties, they also strike out a lot, and most of their better hitters are batting from the left side.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think makes it a really appealing spot. Like they have some good hitters. We know that. And if Corbin's not pitching well, the Mets are good enough to take advantage.
Right.
But if Corbin has his good stuff, it sets up nicely because their best, most dangerous hitters for the most part are left-handed. Ramos is hitting 7th, which surprised me, but it is, a little bit less at bats that Corbin has to face him. So yeah, I do think that it's a pretty nice spot. Since the start of last season, the active Mets roster has a 26% strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching, 105 WRC plus. So slightly above average in terms of production, but the strikeouts are there, and we know Corbin can take advantage of that.
All right. The other side of this, Wilmer Font totals in these games are, I'd say as expected. The Washington Nationals are at 4.5. Let's see if that moved at all since I last looked. If you have it pulled up, feel free. But Nationals at 4.5 still, yeah. And then the Mets are at 3.6. So, it is a good spot for Corbin. What are your thoughts on hitters here, though, specifically for the Nats?
Yeah, right now I'm getting to the Nats as a top 5 stack, and it's not that I think that it's a great spot for them, but they are really affordably priced. Again, there's just a lot of upside here with Juan Soto being $4,500 on DraftKings. Rendon's, I think, $4,600. You have Victor Robles, who's affordable. It's just a spot where if you are looking to pay up for pitching, you do get some pretty solid upside in the middle of this Nats lineup. And then there's, just guys that you can use to fill in your stack. So it's not a spot where I love the matchup or I feel super confident in the Nats, but I think it does get you a lot of upside. As far as individual hitters go, Juan Soto would be the priority for me. Rendon, I think, is a good play. Victor Robles getting into a lot of my lineups right now as well.
Okay. Now we talk Boston and Colorado, and we have one of our favorite pitchers on the mound. Full disclosure, I don't see myself getting to a whole lot of Herman Marquez. I have a ton of respect for him. I know you do as well. So I'm looking forward to your take on Boston bats today because while Marquez is still a very talented pitcher, Boston does also have a 5-run total at Fenway Park. But let's start with Eduardo Rodriguez, Adam. We saw Chris Sale strike out 17 batters yesterday. In 24 batters faced, 71% K rate. He struck out the side 4 times, 3 times in order. Safe to say he's back. Now, I'm not saying that Eduardo Rodriguez is Chris Sale by any stretch. What I am saying is he does have a good changeup. He does have decent enough break or off-speed stuff to where he should be able to do some damage himself. What do you see in this matchup against the Rockies tonight?
Yeah, it's just an appealing price tag on the 2 pitcher sites for Rodriguez. A good enough pitcher. He has good strikeout stuff. If he makes mistakes, there are certainly a couple of hitters in this lineup that can take advantage. With Arenado, Story, Blackman's good against lefties. But It's just a spot that offers strikeouts. You have Raimel Tapia hitting fifth again. You have David Dahl in the lineup. Both of those guys are 30-plus strikeout percentages against lefties. Ryan McMahon is up over 30% as well. Story's at like 27%. Reynolds is up close to 30%. So tons of strikeout upside again for Rodriguez. And he's cheap enough where if he does give up a home run or two, as long as they're solo shots, he's still in a perfectly fine spot. And also when you look around him as far as pricing, you have Marquez at 9K, but it's a pretty dead range. So I think Rodriguez will be really popular for that reason. I think that's perfectly fine with me. In my initial crunch, I was getting him as my second highest owned DraftKings pitcher behind Justin Verlander. He just makes a lot of stuff work. And, if you wanted to get to an Arenado or a Story leverage play, I think that's perfectly fine because they're both really, really good hitters. Rodriguez certainly isn't Chris Sale. He's not infallible. He's not like the worst matchup in the world, but they are expensive. And if I in prioritizing one over the other, I'm just going to the pitcher in Rodriguez.
Yep, me too. I like Rodriguez quite a bit today. Now, there are several guys in this range that I think are viable, some who we still haven't discussed yet, but career high swinging strike rate this year, 25% whiffs on the changeup. Like, I know he can miss bats, and you just ran over some of the K totals or the K numbers for these Colorado hitters. We know that the strikeouts are there, and that's kind of all that matters here. They do have some power. There's no question about that. But these guys can also go down in order, as we saw yesterday, all by way of strikeout, and that's appealing to me. The Colorado Rockies also have one of the lower totals on this slate. Last I looked, it was at 4.1, so not crazy low, but also not very imposing either. What are your thoughts on Marquez in Boston? Really looking forward to this take.
Yeah, so one thing I did want to point out with Rodriguez, on Yahoo, he's actually $2 more expensive than Kenta Maeda.
Sorry,
I think that's really interesting.
Who was that?
What'd you say?
I said sorry. Are you talking about Rodriguez?
Yeah. I just wanted to point out the pricing on Yahoo.
Gotcha.
He's $2 more expensive than Kenta Maeda is. So that's a spot where I would pay attention to projected ownership. There's probably a good chance that you see Rodriguez's ownership be a bit higher than it should in that spot, just because people, do research for multiple sites. And sometimes, they get Rodriguez is their guy, and they're just going to play him, across the board. Kenta Maeda, if you're going to get him at lower ownership at a cheaper price tag, is a pretty appealing play against the Padres. But on DraftKings, where Rodriguez is $2K less expensive, he's the guy that I would rather get to. As far as Marquez goes, I really hate when he pitches outside of Coors against good teams because I feel like I'm obligated to load up on him in tournaments, but I'm also not getting there. I think he's a really, really good pitcher. I think the price tag is very affordable, but there's so many guys on this slate that are also really talented and also in good spots.
Exactly.
With Verlander in an absolutely great spot, with Corbin in a great spot, Kenta Maeda is in a good spot, Rodriguez is in a good spot. You have just talented pitchers everywhere. And the reason that I have trouble getting to Marquez, it's not that I doubt he can have success against the Red Sox, because I think he's good enough to have success against anyone. But let's say Marquez goes out there and gets you like 26 DraftKings points, which would be a win. You still have to worry about Patrick Corbin and Justin Verlander not just absolutely destroying their matchups and making Marquez irrelevant. And so when you combine the frequency of those two events happening, Marquez actually having a good start here and coming through, and Verlander, Corbin failing and not beating Marquez, it just gets to a really low probability. So I'm not getting to much Marquez. I am getting to the Red Sox just because of their price tags. The matchup with Marquez is obviously awful, but the Rockies do have one of the worst bullpens in baseball. And if they can somehow get to Marquez, which isn't out of the question because they just have so many good hitters in this lineup that are difficult to strike out, they have a lot of add-on upside throughout the game against the Rockies bullpen. It is in Fenway, which is nice for the Red Sox right-handed power. So I'm getting the Red Sox to the top 5 stack just because of the upside that they offer at reasonable price tags.
I think it's a really good point, though, just as far as Marquez goes. Like, a good game is not good enough on a night like tonight, or at least, like you said, very low likelihood that it is.
Right. Let's say Corbin were facing Houston and somehow Verlander was facing the Angels, that's not the point. But if they were in matchups like that and you were still getting a ton of ownership going to Verlander and Corbin, then I would be much more interested in taking a chance on Marquez in a really difficult matchup, but one where none of the pitchers have a good matchup. But here it's just you're taking a guy who is just like Corbin and Verlander are just as good as Marquez, obviously, in terms of talent, and they're just in much better spots. So it gets really, really difficult for me to get there.
Right, exactly. I mean, and you're talking about, or you're talking about not just a good hitting offense, but also a team that does not strike out. You know, the Boston Red Sox against righties this season, what's their K rate? I mean, it's their active roster K rate has to be, yeah, so 20, oh no, hold on. 20.3%. Super low. Like really, really low. It's bottom 5, bottom 6. So, yeah, it's just there's not enough there. Now, there is enough there with Justin Verlander. I was writing the deep dive today, and I thought to myself, this might be the easiest. I started with Verlander. Might be the easiest write-up I've done all season long. Like, not only is he priced reasonably, I can't tell if you're with me or not. You've just got a dead stare going, which is either a wonderful job of freezing your face, or you're gone. There, I saw you move a little bit. I don't know if you can hear me. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep talking, and hopefully you're back by the time and out of your trance by the time I'm done talking. No. You were stuck. I said I'm just going to keep talking, and hopefully you're unfrozen by the time I'm done.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you got. Yeah. Now I can. Can you hear me? Adam.
Hear me?
Not well. Now you got me echoing too, man. Do me a favor.
Should good now, I think. Hear me okay?
Yeah, now you're a little bit better. What I said was that writing Verlander up was the easiest write up of the year. Not only is it a really...
Yeah, I was thinking probably second to DeGrom again.
What? I'm going to have... You know what? I'm going to have...
Actually, second DeGrom against me.
Yeah, restart your stream. Because you're totally whacked out right now. It's not working. So, Josh, that's totally up to you. I know you just asked me if we need you, but by the way, as you guys know, Josh is always on call. Does a phenomenal job of making sure he's listening to every show just in case Adam happens to cut out. But look, Houston is a top offense today. Justin Verlander is a top pitcher. He is the biggest favorite on the slate, and it's really not close. And he's facing a Detroit team that is tied for the league lead in strikeouts versus right-handed pitching. So basically everything falls into place here when it comes to Justin Verlander. And 11K on DraftKings is actually cheap if you ask me. The biggest thing here is, oh, hey guy, I'm not going to bother reframing yet because we're just going to,
I was going to say just boot him.
Yeah. Well, I guess I should, huh? Yeah. Let me boot him. So look at that. There we go. How you doing, guy?
I'm good, man.
I was hoping that he would come. I gave him some time. I think I was patient.
I think so too.
So I don't like, there's never a safe pitcher in daily fantasy baseball, Josh, because anything can go wrong. Like I was thinking today, and I've said this before, it's so ridiculous that a run is not earned if the pitcher commits an error, right?
So silly.
But if he throws a wild pitch, it is earned.
It should just be runs.
Right. So error on the pitcher, no earned run. Wild pitch, earned run. Passed ball, no earned run, but not considered an error. Riddle me that, fella. Anyway, there's no such thing as a safe pitcher, but if there was ever such a thing, it would be Verlander tonight against Detroit is what I was getting at.
You would think. I mean, he grades out better than anybody on the slate by a mile for me. And it's not like this slate is short on talent. It's not. I like a lot of the pitching at the top. I mentioned earlier today, I had Verlander projected for 9.2 strikeouts. That's 2 full strikeouts ahead of the guy that's in second. That's a massive amount if you're just talking about one individual start. That's 60 additional strikeouts over 30 starts. I mean, that makes for a very, very different outcome. I don't know how you get away from him. He's the easiest slot in cash on the day.
Right.
And clearly a GPP, fantastic option in GPP as well.
No question. And the funny thing is, like, it's not a shallow pitcher slate. You have Corbin outside of Verlander, Kenta Maeda against San Diego we haven't talked about yet, Eduardo Rodriguez. It's not like you don't have quality options. It's just Verlander's head and shoulders above all of them from a cash standpoint. And like you said, if you wanted to run him heavy exposure in tournaments, I don't think anybody would blame you for that decision whatsoever.
No, I mean, his upside is just, it's on a different level. He's the only pitcher I have projected in the 40s on FanDuel by 5.8 points. Next closest guy is 37. Like, it's just crazy. There's a giant chasm between him and everybody else.
Yeah, it's amazing. So Adam's trying to join once he pops up. You can leave or I'll boot you, but I appreciate.
Yeah, I can step out. I have the connection wherewithal to be able to just be like, I can leave casually on my own.
All right. You're aware of your surroundings, is what you're saying.
Well, very much so. I'm waiting on him too. It's good to see that Zoom and Aperion work the same way in that it takes 25 minutes when it opens.
You mean works the same way for Adam?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
They both work perfectly for every
for
single.
Most people, exactly. For most people, it's hardly an issue.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's not like he just won $35,000 last night. I get it. He can't buy a new computer. It makes sense.
He's over there sliding stuff around on his abacus, trying to put his lines together. Insane.
So Houston hitters. I mentioned this in the deep dive today. You can check it out on awesomeo.com. It's an in-depth, comprehensive article on, the breakdown of the slate every day. Adam and I switch off days. Put a lot of time into this. There's also, of course, the Fantasy Cruncher add-on. There's the Fantasy Cruncher Pro, the lineup builder. Oh my God, there's so much. The ownership projections, we reference them every show. Player projections for every sport. We got our boy Ben Rasa breaking down PGA tonight. So much more that I don't even have time to get to it all. But the one tool that I really like and have been using a lot lately, Josh, and is even more interesting when referring to tonight's slate is
my Spotlight Pitchers article.
That one as well. Sorry, I didn't mention it.
You're good.
So if I didn't write the deep dive each day, I probably wouldn't mention that either. But the Houston Astros have a probability of being the top stack 22.9%.
Yeah.
Ownership 15.5. That's on DraftKings. I'm not going to go across all of the sites, but that is remarkable.
It's crazy. And I completely get it. Like, it's hard not, their lineup is loaded basically from top to bottom. I don't think that Chirinos or Marisnik or anybody is who's at the bottom. Chirinos and Marisnik. I don't think they're world beaters, but you're getting a catcher in part of your stack. And then at the top, Springer, Bregman, Correa, Brantley. It's hard to want to go a different direction, especially in this particular matchup.
I completely agree. And Josh, I believe it's time to pass that baton.
Good luck. Tip. I'm around 29 more minutes. Don't worry. I'll be back for live before lock.
The hat tip.
Not everybody got their, in case everybody didn't get their fill, I'll be back in a half hour.
I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks,
Later.
Josh.
Yep. No problem. Later, guys.
I booted him before he could leave just to, exert that power. All right. So we're back. You're back. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Justin Verlander, do we even need to repeat that he's an incredible play everywhere?
As long as you guys both said he's really, really good and the top projected pitcher on the slate and the matchup is phenomenal, then no.
Yep. And the Tigers strike out at league high clip versus righties. Let's not forget about that. What about Houston hitters, I'll just mention it one more time. Awesemo's top stack tool has them 23% probability of being the highest or the best stack, which is insane. It's absolutely insane. The next closest team, the Rangers, who I really like, we'll get there, are 9.9%. Just a wild, wild difference there.
Yeah, it's the Astros will be really highly owned, but it's for good reason. I mean, you have a pitcher in Gregory Soto who I'm actually shocked is making another major league start. His first start was during the Twins and Tigers doubleheader, and I thought they had called him up just to be a guy to throw pitches so that they didn't have to use any of their major league pitchers in that second game. He hadn't pitched above Double-A. He's like their 26th prospect in the Tigers organization.
Yep.
He's got nothing good about him. But he's going out here to face the Astros and their team full of just phenomenal hitters. And then behind that, you have a Tigers bullpen that has one of the highest xFIPs in baseball, has allowed 1.75 home runs per 9 innings this season. Just an absolutely amazing spot for Houston, top to bottom. The only reason not to have Houston is if you're concerned about ownership. They're clearly coming in as my number one stack. I'm sure they're coming in as everyone's number one stack. In the initial crunch that I made in my top of 600 lineups, I had 20% 5-man Houston stacks. And, I obviously perfectly fine with that. It's just that I could see possibly ending up lower than that once I rank my lineups, including ownership. But I'm not even sure that'll be the case because it's such a good spot for Houston top to bottom.
Yep. It really, really, really is, man. Those days where you write an article, because you write the deep dive too, and every position you want to be different, you want to add variety, but you feel like you'd just be doing a disservice to everybody by not writing up Tyler White. Well, this was before lineups came out. Let me pull the lineup. By not writing, he's not in it, but White and Gurriel, and then not writing up Aledmys Diaz as the top guy, and not writing up Bregman, and then Chirino as the catcher. Oh, and Carlos Correa, and then of course George Springer, and sprinkling in some Michael Brantley and Jake Marisnick as well. Like, every single one of them you could make a very valid argument for against a Double-A southpaw.
Yeah, and by the time you get to like Carlos Correa, you've run out of negative adjectives to use to talk about
exactly.
Gregory Soto.
Yep. That's when I start talking about the Tigers bullpen and just start saying really horrible stuff. Like, Soto will not leave the mound with a heartbeat tonight. And, if he does, or I think today was like, Soto is the worst pitcher going on the slate, and I expect the Astros to remind him of that early and often. You just have to come up with like witty anecdotes, or else you're so repetitive. But what else are you gonna? Right. Right. What else are you gonna do though? Like, are you not gonna write up Bregman, Correa, and Springer because you already talked about too many Astros?
Right. Exactly. Start giving him the treatment. I don't know if you do it, but I've started just like throwing Mike Trout in the honorable mention section and then just saying he's not actually honorable mention, but I'm tired of writing about Mike Trout every day.
Yep. All the time. Yeah. And if it's always the first one in honorable mention, there's just no reason to keep writing him up. Yeah. By the way, we don't just write up one player at each position. But on nights like tonight, we you kind of go heavy on a team like Houston. I just, I love them. It's difficult to see them failing, and they also, by the way, this was one of the things that I dug deep for this one and just went away from individual talk when I got to like Correa or Springer. But against lefties this season, the Astros lead the league in WOBA. They are third in ISO, just below the Rockies and Diamondbacks, and they lead the league in WRC plus. So like, you can't find a bad thing about them.
And it's not even just against lefties. As of a week ago, they, in terms of WRC plus, were the best offense in the history of baseball, like since 1920.
Crazy. Yeah, it really. I remember last year, their starting five had their WAR was like the highest combined WAR I've ever seen in my life. I went back like 40 years on FanGraphs, like by year, just looking one by one, and I think they were the highest going back to like 1965 or something. It's just insane. Whenever
I mean, no, good.
What were you gonna say?
No, good. Finish.
It wasn't important. Do you have anything else on this game?
No, I was just going to say that basically with Houston, if you're playing tournaments, do whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with as far as ownership goes. There's certainly a point where any offense gets to where you would want to come in underweight, but I'm not sure Houston will actually get to that point on this slate, even though they will be really popular. In cash games, obviously, you're getting to these guys. They're basically all top plays at their positions.
All right. Tampa, Miami. You know, kind of what we said yesterday, actually, exactly what we said came to fruition, that we really did like Charlie Morton, and we expected him to have a really solid game. It's just playing him over Chris Sale would have been a mistake from an upside standpoint alone. Now, Morton went 6 scoreless with 5 Ks, only 3 base runners, 26 fantasy points. Very nice. Chris Sale struck out, all of Fenway Park. So a little bit of a difference. The reason I bring that up is because Jalen Beaks will draw he wins the pitcher lottery. He wins the pitcher lottery tonight. He gets to face the Marlins. And he is minimum salary on Yahoo. He's $25, and on FanDuel he's $5,500, which is as cheap as it gets. But at the same time, like, it's a one pitcher site. So where are you at on a guy like Beaks at minimum salary on Yahoo, where he's been very good. He's striking out north of a batter per inning, or actually exactly a batter per inning. And he's allowed 1 home run this season in 29 frames. And another thing is, I just don't know what his pitch count's going to be. He's gone 48, 33, 66, 75, 84, and 50. So what do you make of him at the cheapest price you can get on Yahoo?
I like it on Yahoo because I think that having a cheap SP2 on the slate is a really good strategy. Like if I look at my early crunches on DraftKings where Beaks isn't minimum price, I'm getting a lot of Urania and Jorge Lopez, and it has nothing to do with their skill set. It just has to do with roster construction. So having Beaks at that minimum price tag on Yahoo is really, really helpful. And you don't need him to throw 80 pitches necessarily to have a good start here against Miami for that price. So I do like him a lot on Yahoo. I don't like him much on FanDuel. The price tag's really appealing, but the problem, it just comes down to raw points because you're going to have like a Verlander or a Corbin or someone like that probably go for like 60 plus points tonight. And Beaks automatically loses some upside because he can't get a quality start because he's not starting. If you get like 30, 35 points from Beaks, that's good point per dollar, but it puts you in a massive hole when there's probably a pitcher on this slate putting up 60 plus raw points. And then on DraftKings, I'm not really getting there because he's $7,600 and he's just not going to throw as many pitches as someone like Eduardo Rodriguez at a similar price point.
Right. And that's really why I only mentioned him on Yahoo, because otherwise it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Did you mention the Marlins K rate against lefties?
No, but I'm sure it's high.
Well, I thought so too. And obviously this isn't something that would really concern you all that much just because they're so bad. An 80 WRC plus, a sub 100 ISO, but they have the second lowest K rate against lefties this season. It's 16%.
Really?
Yeah. Now,
I guess it makes sense. They have a lot of righties.
Sorry, what's that?
They do have a lot of righties. I guess it makes sense.
Right. That was my first thought. And they, 288 plate appearances, not a ton, but I mean, they're so bad that it's allowed guys just to pitch really deep into games. And just by being on the mound and facing them, you're going to get a handful of strikeouts anyway, whether it's looking or swinging. You're in there long enough to have it work your way. But for me, Beaks on Yahoo makes sense. Elsewhere, I just don't see it. On FanDuel, for the exact reasons you stated, and on DraftKings, because 7,600 is a lot for a guy that might throw 58 pitches.
Right.
What do you make of the rest of this game? Jose Urena is, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just talking if you're playing 150 lineups. He has $5,300, Adam. He's thrown 6 innings or more in 5 straight starts, so he can go relatively deep. He just doesn't miss any bats, doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. So the benefits, he's dirt cheap, almost the minimum for a starter. He is at Marlins Park, and he does a decent job of working short innings. The downside is he's Jose Urena, and there's a decent amount of good bats on Tampa Bay, and he just doesn't miss any of them.
Exactly. DraftKings is the only spot that I would have interest. I'd rather roster Beaks on Yahoo. but it's just purely a price play for the same reasons that I had tons of Brett Anderson yesterday. It's just because I want to get to like Justin Verlander and I want to get to good bats. And having a pitcher down around $5,000 lets you do that.
What did Anderson finish with?
Like 11.5.
Okay.
So he didn't help. He didn't hurt. He would have been really useful if Musgrove didn't have the game he had. So like my good lineups were all Joe Musgrove lineups. But when you're building a lineup, like getting Sale, Anderson, and good bats, it still gives you a ton of upside.
I love that you went back to the well with Musgrove, man. Balls.
Yeah, I was terrified.
Balls. Yeah, that's good stuff. Sorry, go ahead with Urania.
No, I mean, it was nice. So I've had a GPP win with Musgrove and with Sonny Gray. So people would say what they want about those guys, but they're winners.
Yeah, and your losing nights are with guys like DeGrom and Scherzer, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, here it's just a price play. Like if I can get 15 points or something out of Urania, I'm really happy. It comes down to what my bats do, but getting Verlander plus Urania, you're spending like a little over 16K at pitcher. That gives you plenty of upside for bats, and it is a good park. There are some strikeouts in the Tampa Bay lineup, even though they have good hitters. Urania actually has the lowest strikeout percentage on the entire slate for anyone not named Gregory Soto at 15.8% this season. Obviously not great, but he's cheap.
Yep. All right. I think we can move on, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, we're through 5. We've got 3 to go. Atlanta, St. Louis, Mike Soroka, Michael Wacha. Wacha struggled, man. And righties have given him a hell of a tough time this season, Adam. The Braves have a implied run total above 5 today. Wacha's striking him out at sub 20%. Righties, 229 ISO, over 2 home runs per 9 allowed thus far, around 100 batters faced. So not a lot, but he hasn't been very good, and he has given up a good amount of power. And guys like Josh Donaldson are, I'd say revived to some extent this year. He's hit well. Dansby Swanson is hitting righties for power for the first time literally in his career. Ronald Acuna is very good. But this is generally a Braves team that we don't stack much because they're kind of difficult to, and they're not that great in stacked form. What about today at SunTrust against Michael Wacha with, believe it or not, the second highest total on this slate?
Yeah, in my initial crunch, they were my second stack behind Houston. You have affordable price tags. You have guys, in a pretty nice matchup against Wacha, who has in the past by lefties, which makes things tough. He's got a 232 expected ISO to lefties, 175 to righties, expected WOBAs of 353 to righties and 354 to lefties. Not missing a ton of bats, like I said. And it's just a good Braves lineup that's affordably priced. You get Ronald Acuna leading off. He's one of my top hitters on the entire slate. Freddie Freeman is affordable, a really good play. Swanson, like you said, hitting for power this year, hitting towards the top of the order at shortstop, so getting a lot of him. Just getting a ton of Atlanta. And, Wacha can be decent at times, but there's not a ton of terrible pitching on this slate. And if you start to factor in ballparks, there's even less of it because you talk about, Urania in Miami, Jorge Lopez in Kansas City not being the best place to hit. So targeting Wacha here in Atlanta, I think, is a pretty appealing spot to be. All
right. I'm with you. I like Donaldson a lot. Obviously have him below Bregman, but I like him a lot. Dansby Swanson, I think, is fine. Obviously behind Carlos Correa, but I like him a lot. Basically, like you said, you have him as your second stack, and they're behind Houston, but not there. I don't really have many guys ahead of them outside of Houston would be the way I'd put it.
Yeah, exactly. Same spot.
Okay. Mike Soroka, thoughts?
He's good. I don't think he really has much of a place for me on this slate. Kind of the same thing we talked about with Marquez. He's not as good a pitcher as Marquez. The matchup's a little bit better against St. Louis, but it is still a dangerous matchup. It's a St. Louis team that just has a ton of really, really good hitters in this lineup. And it's tough to see Soroka, who, he has decent strikeout numbers, but he's not a strikeout guy. He's a command guy that, can get ahead in counts and finish some guys off and get strikeouts, but he's not, a Justin Verlander or a Patrick Corbin that is likely to go out there and just mow down an entire order. If you were a little bit cheaper, I'd have interest, but I just like Rodriguez a bit more for a little bit less.
So do I. I mean, the one thing Soroka's been brilliant at is he hasn't allowed a single home run this season, so it's hard. And I'm not saying that can't change at any time, but he's good. And while I don't think I'll have much of him, I also don't see myself with a whole lot of St. Louis, Adam.
I'll probably get to more Cardinals than you, I would guess, just because of their price tags, especially at the top. Matt Carpenter is still really inexpensive with at Paul Goldschmidt's just a great hitter who's affordable. So I'm getting a lot of both of those guys. Then you get Yadi Molina at an affordable price tag. Marcelo Ozuna's affordable. We talk about it a lot with St. Louis. In matchups, even against good pitchers like Soroka, they just have so many good hitters and so much upside top to bottom in their lineup that when they're facing someone like Soroka, the ownership goes down, but they still just have such a high ceiling that I like getting to them as a stack because they just have so much power.
You had a great call on that yesterday against Fultonevich. You had mentioned that you liked St. Louis a lot, so nice call. The reason with them, I might not have as much as you, and so I'll put it this way. With Atlanta, I mentioned like certain individual players, I have them second at their position, but I don't have them as my second stack. Actually, the team that I have second below Houston is the Texas Rangers. As we move to this game now, you have on the bump Mike Minor for Texas and Jorge Lopez for Kansas City. Look, I know he hasn't pitched a ton. This season he has made 8 starts, though. He's pretty much thrown a normal amount of innings. He's qualified. Jorge Lopez this season has been really, really, really bad against lefties. I mean, he is allowing more than 3 home runs per 9, a 348 ISO, 432 WOBA, a K rate, a hard hit rate through the roof. Like all of the numbers here for Jorge Lopez are horrible, and his BABIP is high, suggests maybe he's been a little bit unlucky, but home runs aren't unlucky, unless he's made all of his starts in pitcher-friendly parks, which he hasn't, especially not at Kauffman, which is fine for extra base hits. For home runs, it's really not that favorable. This guy has already allowed 6 home runs, 5 doubles, and a triple to lefties in only 79 batters faced. It's a Texas team that, with Shin-Soo Choo, Willie Calhoun batting second, not saying he's a great player, but he's another lefty. Nomar Mazara, dirt cheap, particularly on FanDuel. Gallo, cleanup, one of the preeminent power hitters in the league. Asdrubal Cabrera, even Rognan Odor. You got 6 lefties to start this lineup off. I love the Rangers tonight as a stack, more so than I do as one-offs. Oh, you know what? I'm an idiot. Did Bailey get swapped in?
I hadn't seen that.
I'm seeing Bailey I'm seeing Bailey on one and Lopez on the other. No,
it was Bailey. How do you really have?
That can't be right? No, it's Lopez. That would have been amazing if I would have been amazing if I just went on that wild rant with the wrong pitcher and you didn't stop me. You've done it before. But anyway, that's where I'm at. I love that you've got 6 lefties against the guy in Lopez who's been murdered by them this season. Small sample or not, the home runs and the power hasn't lied. So floor's yours, man.
Yeah, I didn't get to a lot of Texas, and that's something I'm going to dig into between now and lock because I don't really know why. It's possible I just input something wrong because I really like them. Also, I ran the crunch before the lineup came out, so I didn't have Willie Calhoun 3,700 batting second. That's something that I would expect gets me to more Texas just because he's cheap batting second and has some power. But it is a good Texas lineup, about as good a lineup as you could ask for here against Lopez. And I'm hoping I get more of them than I did in my initial crunch. Joey Gallo, obviously expensive, but has tons of power here. Calhoun's affordable. Mazara's affordable. Chu is good. Cabrera is good enough.
Odor is cheap.
Yeah, Odor sucks, but he's cheap.
He's terrible.
So, it's a really good spot for Texas. That being said, I also was getting to some Jorge Lopez just because of the price. Same thing with Urania, except for Lopez will be much lower owned because he's not good. He's not pitching in Miami and he's facing the Rangers. But there are some strikeouts in Texas's lineup. It's a pure price play. I would expect to have less of him than Urania. But across 150 lineups, I think going cheap at SP2 just gets me a lot of upside.
All right. By the way, 82 degrees at first pitch. So I mean, this is a good spot. Texas right now is my second favorite stack on the slate, behind of course Houston. Um, Using the Awesemo stack tool, by the way, you have Texas as the second highest likelihood probability of being the top stack, 9.9%. So still a ways behind Houston, but also the ownership is quite a bit lower. They're all the way down there at 6% on DraftKings, Adam. On FanDuel, they're higher because you got much more favorable pricing. But yeah, I think it definitely makes a lot of sense. Actually, no, sorry. FanDuel, they're 12%. Yahoo, they're at 12%, but only 6% on DraftKings. I don't think it's that hard to work them in. Do you want to talk about Mike Minor and Kansas City bats?
So I just wanted to add that I'm kind of like trying to figure out why I didn't get more Texas. My guess is that my projected lineup had like $4,800 Hunter Pence and $5,200 Elvis Andrus or whatever they were.
That makes sense.
So so once I rerun it with cheap Calhoun, with a much less expensive lineup and just kind of a better lineup, I'll probably get a lot more Texas than I had. As far as Minor goes, I think he's really good. I put him in that same category with Marquez and Soroka, where I think he's good. I don't think I get to a lot on this slate. You do have some dangerous bats in the Kansas City lineup with Whit Merrifield, Mondesi, Hunter Dozier, who's made huge improvements this year. It's not a cakewalk lineup, but I expect Minor to have success more often than not, just because I think he's good. But it's not like he's cheap. He's more expensive. He's a lot more expensive than Rodriguez. He's even more expensive than Marquez, who is more talented. I'm just not really getting to a lot of him, not getting to a lot of Kansas City either, though.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think Minor's a crazy tournament pivot off of, what is likely to be a lot of chalk in that area. He's the Royals do strike out at a pretty decent clip. Look, they're not a bad team, but I do like lefties better against them, just because, Alex Gordon has been one of their better bats this year. Minor's got the lefty-lefty matchup. He's much more prone to homers against righties. So yeah, I don't think this is a terrible spot for Minor, but it's hard to prioritize him. It definitely is.
From a point per dollar perspective, I think Nicky Lopez is kind of interesting. It's lefty-lefty, but he is hitting second on a team with a 4.7 implied run total.
Yep. Yeah, sure. Let's get to the last game. By the way, when I was going over all of the great stuff we have on Awesemo.com, I think I totally forgot the promo code, which is Deeper Dive. And you use that when you sign out. You get 50% off your first month. So half off your first month of all premium content at Awesemo.com. Use the promo code Deeper Dive to get half off. And say what's up in Slack chat when you do. Premium Slack chat will be around. One of us will. Happy to answer questions, show you around, and all that good stuff. Oh, and for those of you that still, for some reason, haven't signed up at Yahoo.com, Daily Fantasy Sports. I'm not talking about Yahoo email. We're talking about Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. I'm dropping the link in chat right now. So you guys go ahead and sign up. And when you do, use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. Get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points, those YSRPs. And what that means is you got money to use on the site, same as currency, to win real money. Okay, Adam, last game here. I just dropped that link. Dave Lochran, it's not under Laffy or Awesemo. It's under my actual real name. So you'll see it right there with the Yahoo link. Dodgers, San Diego Padres, Kenta Maeda, Matt Strahm. Where do you stand on a guy like Maeda, who for his career has been stellar against righties, as we know, and against the San Diego team that has a lot of strikeouts when facing right-handed pitchers and will run, I don't know, what do you think, 6 righties in the lineup today?
I'm expecting 6 or 7. I think it's a good spot for Maeda, no question. The Padres have a lot of power, but they are predominantly right-handed, like you said. They do have a lot of strikeouts, and Maeda should be able to get plenty of swings and misses against the right-handed heavy team. I'm not getting to a lot of him though. Just because. Right, exactly, and that's what it kind of comes down to for me is you're gonna let's say Maeda let's assume all the pitchers at the top pitch well. You probably get 90 to 95 pitches from Maeda. You probably get 110 from Verlander. You probably get 110 from Corbin. Yes, once you get to pitch counts that high, your pitches tend to be less effective. But when you're just talking about raw ceiling, that extra inning, and the strikeouts that comes with it, obviously gives you a higher ceiling. So I do have those guys ahead of him as priorities, and that's driving down my Maeda exposure, in addition to the fact that you have Eduardo Rodriguez for less money as your SP2. So if you're getting the Kenta Maeda, it's not a spot where I would talk you off of it. It's just not a spot where I think I'm getting to very often. I would rather get to Maeda than Herman Marquez on this particular slate. I'd rather get there than Soroka, but I'm still just not getting to a lot of him compared to Verlander or Corbin or Rodriguez.
All right. And I don't disagree. Look, if I had no concerns about Maeda's pitch count, I can tell you right now, I would have him ranked really high today. I mean, Adam, this is a guy that excels against righties. For his career, he has a 31% strikeout rate for his career. Like, elite against righties, less than a home run per 9, a 260 some WOBA, like really great numbers. But like you're saying, if he throws, if he goes 5 innings and he's at 82 pitches and he comes up in the order, it's guaranteed. It's almost guaranteed. He doesn't even have to come up in the order for Roberts to yank him. Like, it's a big concern, and it's unfortunate because it's a great spot. Now, let me just say this, though. That doesn't mean that I'm clearing Maeda off the board, that I don't have any interest. I do. I still think he could give you very strong numbers today. But I think the likelihood or the probability of him having a monster game is lower than guys who can consistently throw 100-plus pitches. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I don't mind taking some tournament shots on the cheap San Diego power. It's not a good matchup at all, but they're going to be unowned. And, Manny Machado is cheap. Franmil Reyes is really good and cheap. Hunter Renfroe may or may not be in the lineup, but if he is, he has tons of power. In tournaments, when you have to find cheap hitters, it's a really good strategy to kind of prioritize the matchup a little bit less and just think about the probability of those guys actually having the ability to hit 2 home runs in a game. And guys like Reyes, Machado, Renfroe all have it at really low ownership and cheap price tags.
All right, I'm with you. So we'll close it out here with Dodger bats or Matt Strom. For me, and then I'll let you finish this out, Kike Hernandez is the one guy that leading off, dirt cheap, great against lefties, even though Strom is good. I still never have a problem getting to Kike Hernandez in a spot like this.
Yeah, Kike is far and away my highest owned Dodgers bat. He's inexpensive. On DraftKings, he has multi-position eligibility, second base and outfield. So you have a ton of spots you can fit him into. He's a good hitter overall. He doesn't get pinch hit for anymore, which, you look to someone like David Freese, who's a cheap first base option batting cleanup. He most likely gets pinch hit for as soon as the Padres bring in a righty, especially the Padres do have a good bullpen as well. So I think Kike is the guy that really stands out here. Affordable price tag, good hitter, leading off. There's not much to dislike about him.
All right, Adam, let's do our top stacks. You can take this first. I am on pins and needles waiting to hear who your number one stack is.
Kansas City Royals. No, I mean, Houston, obviously. Once you get past Houston, you get to Atlanta, Boston. I'm going to throw Texas in there because I really think when I recrunched, I'm going to get a lot more than I did originally, and because I just really like them. Boston, Washington, because they're cheap.
All right. I'm going to go a little bit different than you. I'm going to give German Marquez the respect I think he deserves. Now, that could go terribly wrong for me. But I'm going to go Houston and then Texas and then Atlanta. And then I think the Philadelphia Phillies could be an interesting play here at reasonably low ownership. So that's what we got. Did Greinke just get hurt? Oh, did Greinke just get hurt? Tell me. Come on. With 2 strikes on Chris Stratton, who was batting in the top of the 8th.
Is this that you have Greinke on the early slate, or are you like genuinely concerned for Greinke's health?
Oh, I don't give a damn about his well-being. Yes, I have Zach Greinke.
Okay. You just had like a lot of emotion in your voice, and I was like, is he like your favorite player or something?
No, absolutely not. And by the way,
okay.
Of course, it's I'm not hoping anyone gets hurt, even if I don't have them. I don't mean to sound callous, but yes, I have Zach Greinke. And look, it's not like he's low owned, but every little bit counts. And he looked pretty damn good. I don't know if he got hurt. I just saw. I'm not watching the game. I saw an injury delay and then a mound visit. So I put 2 and 2 together, Adam. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's not great.
No. Anyway, thanks as always for tuning in, guys. If you like the video, you want to see more, and you like the content, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. It helps us a lot, and we really appreciate it. Subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. And we'll see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive. Stick around. Josh and Chris going to take you up to lock on Live Before Lock. Good luck tonight. We'll see you back here Thursday night.